You should buy 5 acres of land right now. Maybe you already live out in the country. It's still a good idea to pick up 5 acres. Maybe you live in a small city, in the burbs, in a big city, whatever. Maybe you live in a red state, you live in a blue state. Again, it doesn't really matter. You need to purchase 5 acres of land right now. And here's why. Welcome to Goose Pond Hideout with Rob. Good morning. Out here on the homestead, sun's coming up, sunrise, drinking a good old fresh cup of black coffee. So anyway, I've been really thinking about it, and you really need to purchase 5 acres of land, like literally right now. I'm not talking about being an extreme prepper. They probably already have their land. I'm talking about you, everybody. You know, even us. We purchased 5 acres a couple years ago, completely wooded, unbuildable, but it's 5 acres of land. And you need that because in today's world, everybody is a consumer. And you just want to be prepared. It's all part of being self-sufficient and being independent and taking care of yourself and your family and getting out of that consumer world, because what happens if something happens, right? And it could be a tornado, a hurricane, a fire, a flood, it could be any kind of disaster up to, the biggie, what hits the fan kind of thing, and it's life as we know it has changed. So again, I've really been thinking about it, and I really want you to super consider picking up 5 acres of land. So what do you want to look for? You want the land to be rural. The more rural, the better, but you've got to be able to get to it. So I would say in most cases, ideally, you'd be looking at about 100 miles from where you live right now. Now, it's going to depend, because again, think about it. If you live out on the West Coast, if you're in California, Washington, whatever, you don't want to buy your piece of land in Pennsylvania. And, it could be called like a bug out property, but bugging out implies, extreme prepping. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you taking a step to being self-sufficient in your life. So things like, you could have, if there's woods on the land, now you've got firewood. You can heat your home with firewood. You can cook with firewood. If the grid goes down for some reason, you have no electricity, no propane, whatever. What are you going to do? If you have 5 acres of land with trees on it, you can have heat and you can have cooking abilities. When we purchased this property here, it was a little over 10 years ago, Tater, go on. Farm animals. He's rubbing against the stand. Anyway, when we purchased this land, we had no cell service. We had to get in the car and drive about 2 miles down the road and sit in a church parking lot so that we could talk on the cell phone. And they recently, with all the expansion and everything that's going on, we're not quite as rural here as we were 10 years ago, and we actually have cell service now. So anyway, that would be an ideal thing, is you want a piece of land that's way out there. You want it to be super rural. You want to be at the end of a road, like one way in and out. You don't need cell service, because if the cell system goes down, who cares now, right? You just need a place to get to. So, again, the firewood thing. The next thing is immediately plant fruit trees that are appropriate for the area that you're in. If you look behind me here, we've got some apple trees, a pear tree. We've got peach trees and things, so that we'll have fruit in another few years. We planted them, a few years ago, and they're growing. You can see a few things. Now, it's probably too far away to see the apples on the tree there. And beyond the fruit trees are wild blackberries that are just about ready to pick, that just naturally grow here on this property. So those are the kinds of things. So get your 5 acres of land, plant fruit trees that are appropriate for your area right away. Most important is you want to have fresh, clean water available. Now that's going to be a real tricky thing depending on where you live, but your rural property, if you had a stream, you could put in a well, maybe a shallow well, so that you have fresh water, because obviously nothing can live without water. And so you've got this property now that's within, driving distance. You definitely want it to be within a tank of gas distance. So when you leave your house and head to your rural property, you don't want to have to be stopping for gas. So you've got to be able to get there in less than a tank of gas. You're planting your fruit trees. You could set up a garden area. You may even be able to, depending on how far away you could have a garden. The problem is you're not going to be able to just jump over there and take care of things. So we've had a lot of rain here, and now that's why I'm just wearing my t-shirt. I don't have my overalls on. We're already, it's 8 in the morning, and it's like 85 degrees out. We're going to be close to 100 today with high humidity, and it's going to be dry all week, so the grass and everything will be all drying up. Car going by on our private rural road. They paved it so people like it. And so, you've got the property, you've got firewood, you're planting your fruit trees, you can start a garden area, but you've got to be careful because you're not going to be able to, pop in and take care of it. You could set yourself up for animals. Again, there's no way you could have animals until you actually live on the property, but you want to be prepared and ready so that you can get chickens or rabbits, or whatever kind of animals that you're going to end up having, so that you have, another food source. Wild animals, again, depending on where you live, if you're way up in Minnesota or Montana, it's going to be different than if you're on the Gulf Coast. But, the wild animals, you could set up for having guineas. They pretty much take care of themselves. They're in the pheasant family. And all of that. So think really hard about you getting 5 acres somewhere. I know you're probably going to have to buy it because you can't really get financing, but that's the point. So figure out a way. It's not cheap. Homesteading is not cheap. Being prepared to take care of yourself is not cheap. You don't do it to save money. You could put that money in the bank, but what happens when you can't pay for things? What happens if those things aren't available? If there's, not food in the grocery store, if there isn't electricity, if for whatever. And again, we're not talking extreme prepper kind of thing. We're talking about normal people being prepared to be more of a producer and taking care of themselves. You taking care of you and your family. And it's just a fun place to, get away from technology in that. You just go there on the weekend, set up your camper or whatever, and de-stress for a couple of days. So be thinking about that. 5 acres, red state, blue state, doesn't matter. If you live in a big city, little city, everybody should have 5 acres of land out there in the country, rural, remote, no cell service, no electricity that you can get to, and be quiet and removed from the rest of the world. So let me know what you think about that.